Now, let me start giving you a quick overview of where we are with wind energy and renewable energy worldwide, just to understand a little bit the landscape. And I think this has some really interesting insights. Now, let you, of course, as Wind Association, present you first how the wind market has developed over the last couple of years. We've seen quite strong growth rates, annual installations of 50, 60 gigawatt per year. So at this point of time, or end of 2019, we had a global installed wind capacity of 650,000 megawatt. We're probably now close to 700,000 megawatt. So now I just need to see how I can sorry. You see here some of the leading markets, and that's of course even more impressive if you look at China, for example, which has an installed wind capacity of probably at this point of time 250 gigawatt. United States, Germany is quite strong. India is very ambitious, Spain, the United Kingdom. So some of those countries, they have done already a lot, and you see that new markets are even now joining. The first investment you see, for example, in Russia, you see there a lot has happened, but the potential is even bigger. Now, this I think is something that I wanted to share in particular with our friends from aviation and shipping, because it shows how fast it can be and that you can really have an exponential growth. When we started with what we now call modern wind turbines, it was around 1980, there was an installed capacity of 8 megawatt. And then you see all the red arrows is when the increased capacity is more than tenfold increased. So we've really fantastic growth rates, and starting really with small machines, just a handful of machines in the 80s and the 90s, industrial development started, and now this is a big industry which employs hundreds of thousands of people. And we are providing around 6% of the global electricity demand. In some countries, like Germany has 20%, Denmark more than 40%. Those shares are already substantially higher, of course. So it is now already a pillar of the global power market. Also to mention, that's also because we had a discussion ahead of this webinar with aviation friends, small wind market. That might be an option also for some of the smaller airports, for example. Small wind plays a role in some parts of the world as well. We have totally now more than 1 million units installed. China is by far the biggest market. So here you rather see what the potential could be, and that plays a role. Small wind usually defined as smaller 100 kilowatts. So this is what a household needs or a small village needs. Now let's go to where renewables stand in the overall energy supply. This covers around 20% of the global energy demand. We should say commercial energy demand, because the daylight that we use, it's also, you can have a lamp or you can use daylight. That's of course not covered here. So renewables are always a bit underestimated, but we are now at around 20%, and that has been growing not very fast, but a little bit. It's more encouraging when you look at the power sector. That's where we are active, of course, as wind power. And there the share is now 27%. And here you see that these are figures from RAN 21, 5.9%. That is very close to our assessment. Here we see very strong growth rates, and that's the good news here. So these are annual installations, not only of wind power, but also of solar, hydropower, bioenergy as well. You see that we've had now more than 200 gigawatt of additional power capacity installed over the last couple of years. And it's even more encouraging when you look at what is the share of renewables in new installations. And this was last year, 75% of all the capacity that was installed new in the power sector has been renewables. I think this is really very clear where we get heading towards. Now, again, looking at the overall picture here, the share of the three sectors, thermal, which is heating mainly, of course, transportation and power, and you see the share of renewables in these different sectors. You see here again, I think these are 2018 figures. That's why the power sector it's a little bit lower than in the previous slide. 26%, now 27, close to 28%. That of course is not so bad. Thermal renewable share is 10%. Transportation is only 3.3%. So obviously, this is the sector where a lot still needs to be done. The barriers here are, of course, that this sector, I think in particular, has been relying on fossil fuels and not so much has happened. And we talk about overall transportation, not in particular about road transportation or aviation shipping. And I'm sure we will hear more from our colleagues about their sectors. So obviously, this sector really has to be now addressed because it is, compared with power, for example, rather behind. And when you look at the policies in the different countries around the world, you see here what we really have to call an imbalance, because while 166 countries have some kind of policies for renewable power, only 46, respectively 49 countries have something in place in transportation. And that again is transportation in general, including road. And of course, in I think like electric cars, this is now also more dynamic development. So this is where we are. Just to mention it, I think there are two trends which we see in general in energy supply, two important game changers. One is sector coupling, so we have a combination of different sectors, and electrification. That's certainly something that we see now. It's very obvious in the case of cars, that many of the cars, the new cars are now registered. Countries like Norway has a share of over 50% of electric cars in new registrations. And you see this in other sectors as well. Both are, of course, very good because it seems to be easier in the power sector to increase the share of renewable energy. And we will certainly hear about what that could mean for those sectors which have not yet used electricity primarily. Coming back to a very basic question, I think it is very important to understand that not only because of the Paris Climate Change Agreement, but also for many other reasons, we see a global paradigm shift. And there is the new normal we have to aim at, and this is globally in all sectors. There must be, as a normal, renewable energy as what we use if we use energy, which is an answer, of course, to the climate crisis, but to a certain degree also to this pandemic situation through which we go at this point of time. Yeah, let me, with this, just that's the end of my introduction.